Thursday, August 16th, 2018, and it's very early in the morning. And sometimes it's just amazing what you stumble across when you're not looking to confirm your own bias in doing research. And this morning I stumbled across a conversation that I'm sure the participants never thought anybody would see. And it's not anything bad. It's not anything politically explosive. It's not, YouTubers hashing and bashing at each other. What it is a Twitter conversation between a bunch of guys. Presumably they were all guys. I didn't go through the whole feed because it's pretty long. Who collect challenge coins, and they collect a specific type of challenge coin, which has to do with cyber warfare, and it drifted a little bit into the artwork for patches for the Drug Enforcement Agency by way of background reference. So this kind of thing is right up my alley. Symbolic communication is a subgroup of the study of anthropology, and there is an actual professional classification called symbolic anthropology, and I was very interested in it when I was an anthropology student at a point in my past where I was considering a career change. So what am I blathering on about again? So I'm really interested in art and the symbolism used in art as a shorthand record of our history as human beings, not just Western history, but that's what I'm most familiar with. And we have to look at this in the context of the time it was used. And lucky for us, this is current history, but it uses symbolism from the past. So rather than me keep blathering on, let's just get to it. Let's go see what I saw this morning. So here is the image that I saw, and the text at the top from the person who originated the discussion says, I collect challenge coins from cyber divisions and they're all bonkers, but this has got to be the wildest one I've ever seen. And I have to agree that it might be the wildest one. And underneath, a person makes a comment about an often misquoted or quoted out of context Bible verse. And he gives a reference talking about the quote, teach my hands, or sometimes it's teach my fingers to war. And he gives a Bible Hub reference, and if you've followed my videos or read my work, I use Bible Hub as much as I use another Bible study tool online. And this is what caught my attention. This quote that we see in memes primarily, but it's also on this particular challenge coin. Teach my fingers to war. What does that really mean, and where does it come from? So I knew where it came from. It comes from Psalm 144, and it reads, by David, meaning King David, blessed is Jehovah my rock. Now I'm going to back up and read that again. I hold to the tradition of not pronouncing the sacred name. So I would read it, blessed is the Lord my rock, who is teaching my hands for war and my fingers for battle. Now this is the first line in a longer psalm. It's not a very long psalm, but it is longer than this. And it is a prayer. Whenever you see a psalm or a proverb that says, blessed is, it's blessing whoever or whatever the subject is to follow. And in this case, in this context, it's blessing the Lord. And this is the most common blessing you will find in Scripture. So I'm interested in looking at the original text and finding out what's the context for this curious request in this blessing. So the scripture reads again, blessed be Adonai, which is the Hebrew word for Lord. Blessed be Adonai, my rock, who trains my hands for war and my fingers for battle. He shows me grace, and he is my fortress, my stronghold in whom I find shelter, my shield in whom I take refuge, who subdues my people under me. And then it goes on from there. And you can see in the third verse another very famous passage that is quoted out of the context of this psalm. Adonai, what are mere mortals that you notice them at all? Humans that you think about them. And proceeding on. So we can see this is not really a request. Um, David's not asking to be trained and skilled. He's blessing the Lord for doing it for him. In other words, he's saying, um, thank you for already preparing me to defend my people. The reason this is interesting to me is because I have been thinking about this verse a lot lately, and it almost seems like every so often I get a prompt to answer my own question and refresh my memory where teach my fingers to war had come from. And so, like yesterday, today I took the time to look it up and see the context. And the Psalm 144 is, I don't know, I can't remember, maybe 18 verses long. It's not very long, but it puts this phrase, teach my fingers to war, in a totally different context than the declarative request or demand. It puts it in the context of being thankful for being prepared for something ahead of time when King David, may not have realized how tough the battle he was going to be involved in would be for his army and himself, and how long it would last, how much effort and time it would take to defend his people against the surrounding cultures who were understandably angry and resentful that this unusual and peculiar clan of people or tribes, band of people had, and I've already messed up the correct terms in anthropology, but anyway, we'll just say these tribes of people have invaded their land, the people who had lived there. But there's a precedent here. If God owns the earth, if he's creator, and we accept that a priori assumption as it is stated in Genesis 1 and going forward, then God has a right to determine where his creation is located. And by his creation, I mean all of his creation, not just the Hebrew tribes. and he has a right to say you can go this far and no farther, both geographically and also spiritually and physically and so on. So this is going to be a very short video. As you may or may not know, today is the day that the refurbished laptop is delivered, and it's 6:18 in the morning Eastern Standard Time. I need to get the dog out because she just cannot understand why we are laying around the house instead of going out and being outside. So I'm going to treat her to as long a walk as we can both tolerate, and then be back here when the mail is delivered. I'm fortunate that I live in spitting distance of a distribution center, and so I don't have to wait all day, and I can get to the task of setting up the laptop. If you're interested in this kind of commentary and the practical application of scripture to daily life, I'm always happy to continue to produce this kind of content. It is fascinating for me, and I hope that you learn something. I'll drop some links in the description box so you can see the thread roll that I made out of this discussion of challenge coins, if that part was interesting to you. And it is kind of an interesting conversation between these handful of guys. I'll also drop a link to a Washington Post article entitled something like "The Strange and Beautiful Artwork of DEA Patches," something along that lines. And then I'll also drop a link to the verse. I would love to hear Roy Potter's commentary on this, and I'm going to pester him a little bit on our behalf to see if he would maybe, do some further discussion of this, because he's much more qualified than I am, and I would prefer to be the student rather than the teacher. And so, knowing that the laptop is going to need a lot of setup and downloading, I'm warning you ahead of time. Based on my prior IT experience, this could take all the way until Sunday to set up and get functioning and tested and whatever. But we might get lucky, you never know. We might be back in business by Friday morning, and you will be able to find out if we are up and running by checking my Twitter feed, John1410, or Mumblet, Halieus Media on Mumblet. Until I see you again, have a great day.